successful pollination with the abiotic agents is a big luck factor, because since they are abiotic, they are not specific, right? They will perform the functions for every single organism, and they will not be specific for any particular one. So their function is like pollination is a very big luck factor. So for the compensation, since it is a luck, it is a chance factor. So to compensate for that, what does the plant do? That it produces a huge number of pollen. That even if some of it gets wasted, still there will be a more amount of pollens that are left. Clear? So this is one adaptation. Now, amongst the abiotic type of pollinators, the pollination by wind is the most common. The pollination by wind is known as anemophily. Okay, so the wind pollination is the most common type of abiotic pollination. Now, for wind pollination, the pollens have certain adaptations. Now, since the pollens here will be transported with the wind as it blows, so the pollens, they are lightweight. Then only if the wind can blow it, right? If had it been heavy, then the wind can't actually blow it. So the pollens are lightweight and they are non-sticky. Now, the stamens are exposed and large so that they can be easily dispersed to the wind. Like the stamens, they are exposed in such a way that as soon as the dehiscence happens, the anther, or you can say the pollens, is in contact with the wind directly. So the stamens are exposed. Now they have large, often feathery stigma to easily trap the airborne pollens. Now, since it is a chance process, it is a luck process, there is no agency to actually pick it up and put it onto the next plant. That's not the case. It's just so general. So to aid this process, the stigma is feathery. Anything that is feathery, things get caught into it. Same way, the airborne pollen gets caught into the feathery stigma. Now, the flowers pollinated by wind, they have a single ovule. Only one ovule is there, so that assured fertilization takes place. Also, the several flowers, they are packed into inflorescence. Like one flower is not there, there are multiple flowers that are packed into an inflorescence. Now, there is an example of a corn cob. Now, everyone has had bhutta, corn. Now, have you seen, peeling it off, there are string hair-like structures on its body, yellow colored, very thin. What are those? Those tassels, they are the stigma and the style. Imagine, we remove the stigma and the style. So that is the stigma and style. And why is it like that? So that if it is like, flowing in the air, so that it can catch the pollen. That is the purpose. Okay. Now, pollination by wind or anemophily is very common in the case of grasses. It is like for grasses, the anemophily is the most common method. And if I say grasses, then wind pollination is for most of the monocots. Clear? Now, the other abiotic pollinating agent is the water. And the pollination by water will be known as hydrophily, because the word hydro means water. Now, this type of pollination is rare. It's not very common, it's rare. And only 30 genera have adapted to this, and they are mostly monocots. Most monocots have this hydrophily mechanism in them. Now, for the transport of male gametes in lower plants, such as algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, water is very essential because they live in water only. Algae lives in water. Bryophyte is amphibian only, it requires water, and so does the pteridophyte. Now, some of the water pollinated plants are Vallisneria and Hydrilla. These are the freshwater plants. Freshwater meaning they are found in the water that does not have any salt concentration. Then there is Zostera, the common name for which is sea grasses, and these are the marine plants. So since they are aquatic plants, so one would think that, okay, water would be needed for their pollination process, right? Okay, let us see. They have very unique cases. Now, in the case of Vallisneria, the female flower reaches the surface of the water. Like the female flower is very long. It has a very long stalk. So with the help of that stalk, what it does is that it sort of moves like this and reaches the surface of the water. Okay. And then what happens? The pollen grains are released onto the surface of water only. So when the water currents, like water moves, right? So when the water currents are there, so the pollen grains reach the stigma. Okay, so this is how very unique process of pollination happens in the case of Vallisneria. Now this was for fresh water. Now talking about the marine water in the case of Zostera, the sea grasses. Now the female flowers in this case, they are submerged in water, meaning they are present below the surface of water, and the pollen grains are released in the water. Now these pollens are long and ribbon-like. The pollens of the water pollinated species are protected from getting wet by a mucilaginous covering. They have a coating that would allow them to not get wet. So in the case of Vallisneria, the female flower is longer. In the case of Zostera, the pollen grains are actually longer and ribbon-like so that they can reach the female flowers. Clear? The two cases are clear to you? Vallisneria and Zostera? Okay. Now, a very important note that not all aquatic plants are pollinated by water only. In majority of the plants that are aquatic, the pollination takes place by wind or insect. It's very rare that the water plants also would have their pollination being done by water. Okay, so as we studied in the initial part only, that water pollination is very rare. Now moving forward, see, in majority of aquatic plants, such as the water hyacinth, that is Ecornia, and the water lily, that is Nymphia, the flowers emerge above the level of water and then they are pollinated either by the insects or by the wind. They do not use water for their pollination process. Now, the wind and the water pollinated flowers are usually not brightly colored and beautiful. Why? Tell me. Why are they not bright and beautiful and fancy?
Because they don't need to
attract insects.
Yes, exactly. Both of you are right. They do not need to attract anyone. So that is why they're like, okay, we'll be just the way we are. We don't have to be beautiful. So that's their case. Now moving forward, see, a majority of the flowering plants, majority of the angiosperms, they are pollinated by the biotic agents, meaning the living agents. Then some of the common pollinating agents are bees, the honeybees, the butterflies, the birds, amongst which hummingbirds and sunbirds are more common, not pigeon and crow. Then there is bats, flies, beetles, wasps, ants, and moths. These are the common pollinating agents. Now, amongst them, bees are the most common and dominating pollinating agent. Like they are the most dominated ones, and the pollination which is done by the insects, they are known, that type of pollination is known as entomophily. Just like how hydrophily is for water pollination, anemophily is for wind pollination, same way entomophily is for insect pollination. Now, apart from bees, there are larger animals also, such as the primates, the lemurs, then arboreal rodents, those organisms such as squirrels or those that live in the tree. They also pollinate. And then there are certain reptiles, such as the gecko lizard and the garden lizard. They also help in the process of pollination. Now, these are larger animals. Clear? Now, how do lemurs, like the primates, even monkeys would come under this? Like how? They eat the fruit and then they throw the seed here and there. So that is how they help for the new plant, you can say, to grow. But as far as this goes, for example, if they go on a plant to actually get the fruit, maybe their hands or their body have gotten caught with the pollen. Now, when they'll touch another flower, the pollen will be transferred. So this is how they do so. Now, the insect pollinated flowers, they are large, they are colorful, brightly colored, they are fragrant, they are very like they have a really good smell, and they are rich in nectar. These adaptations are there so as to attract the insects or the animals. Now, when the flowers are small, like for example, it is insect pollinated flower only, but the flower is small and it is clustered into a inflorescence. Then what happens? Then the pollinators, they are attracted by the smell or the color. They'll see fragrance and they'll be attracted towards it. But this fragrance and color, everything is for the insects, like the bees and the flies. I mean, the bees more particularly. Talking about the flies and the beetles, they are the ones that are attracted to foul odors. So you might have come across any flower that smells bad. There are many flowers that smell atrocious. Why? They do so because they have to attract the flies and the beetles. The beetles and the flies will only be attracted to bad smell. So there are some flowers that smell bad to attract them. Now, the flowers also produce rewards to the pollinators in the form of nectar and pollen grains. These are known as floral rewards. See, it is not the case that the flowers or the angiosperms, they would use the pollinators just for pollination process. No. In nature, everything is a two-way process. If it takes the help of the insect, it gives the insect something as well, and that's something that the flowers give to the insect. That thing is known as the floral reward. The honey bees, when it takes the nectar from the flower, what does it make? It makes honey with the help of that nectar. So honey, right? And then there are some bees that also sometimes consume the pollen also, since pollen is so nutritious. Now, when the animals or insects come to the flower to get the nectar and other rewards, the body of the animal gets coated with pollen grains. And when they go to the other flower, they will transfer the pollen grain to the stigma. And this is how the pollination takes place. Now, this happens so frequently that this becomes one of the most common method of pollination, because you'll always find honeybees buzzing around flowers, isn't it? Always. Now, in some species, floral rewards are in a different form. Sometimes they provide a proper, like, safe place to lay the eggs, such as the plant that is Amorphophallus. It has the tallest flower, 6 feet in height. So, if it is so tall, then it could let its pollinator lay its egg or safe place to rest, so that it won't be attacked by any other organism. Now, there is a relationship between Pronuba moth, a type of moth, and a plant that is known as yucca plant. Now, they have a very special relationship where they cannot complete their lives without each other. What happens? The moth deposits its egg in the ovarian locule, and the flower in turn gets pollinated by the moth. So when the moth will come to one flower to lay its egg, so its body gets coated with the pollen. Now, after laying its egg there, it will go to another flower to lay the rest of the eggs. So that way it is transferring the pollen grains. Now, when the egg hatches in the flower, then the egg, it comes out soon. Okay, so that it does not eat the plant, and it would let the plant to develop, the seed to develop properly. So this is a mutual relationship, because none of them can complete their life without each other. If the Pronuba moth does not get a safe place to lay their egg, then they would die. If the yucca plant does not get pollinated, then their species will also be declined. Clear? Now coming on to pollen robbers. Now there are some insects that consume the pollen without helping in pollination. So we'll call them as the pollen robbers or nectar robbers. So imagine they are so cunning that they come to the flower, they take the reward, but they'll do nothing to the flower. So those are known as the pollen robbers. Now tell me, do you people have any doubts up until now? This chapter is nice, no? You won't, I don't think so that you would be finding it difficult anywhere, because it's so straightforward. It's all just processes and processes, isn't it? Is anyone finding it hard?
It's kind of
No, ma'am.
boring.
Kind of boring? Oh, it's kind of boring. Is it boring to others also?
No, ma'am. It's kind of straightforward.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. And try to compare it with class 11. You will feel like, oh, 12 chapters are amazing. Because 11th had a lot of technicalities. Respiration in plants? Who remembers that horrific chapter?
My favorite.
Me?
My favorite.
Your favorite? All right. Now you people can note down. Then we'll move on to the next topic.
Done, ma'am.
Everyone's done?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Done, ma'am.
Everyone's done?
Yes, ma'am.
Done.
Everyone's done?
No,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
1 minute.
Okay.
Done, ma'am.
Done, ma'am.
Everyone's done?
Yes, ma'am.
Done, ma'am.
Everyone's done?
Yes, ma'am. Done, ma'am.
Everyone's done.
Yes, ma'am.
Done, ma'am.
Everyone's done.
1 minute, ma'am.
Okay.
Done, ma'am.
Done.
Everyone's done?
No, ma'am.
Okay.